Hey friends! Alright, so I don't know whether we should consider this garden week 1 or if this is like garden build week 3. You know, let's just call it week 1. Here's where we're at in the backyard garden. The raised garden beds have been disassembled, emptied out, moved from their old location, which is like right here out of frame, to over there, you can see right there, re-put in place, leveled, new weed guard kind of stuff that goes inside the bin to just keep the dirt separated from the wood has been put in and stapled in. The dirt from the old beds that I shoveled out of the beds, put it on a big tarp in the middle of the yard, added a few soil amendments, and then put it back in the beds, so that's in there. This first year of this garden, it's gonna kind of be growing while I'm still finishing the rest of the garden, so it's not gonna be perfect by any means anytime soon, but it's going to be fun, and it's gonna be lovely, and it's gonna be fruitful, and it's going to be healing to work on. Like, this whole gardening discipline, this whole practice, this whole hobby feels so much like the benefits are in the activity, not in the destination. It's great to eat something you grew, and that's great for your body too, but for your soul, it's all in the process. So I'm gonna take you for a garden walkthrough, and I'm gonna do these walkthroughs as we go through the garden this year, and that way I have an incredible journal, garden journal, and you can just kind of see and learn and get inspiration and watch me mess up and try again as we go. So let's go. Florida, if you leave your shoes outside, you always better shake them out to make sure there's no critters living in them. Oh my gosh, you guys, look at how good my seedlings are doing. I have never had this much success. Everything that I bought seeds for germinated. This has legitimately never happened to me in my gardening life, and I feel like it's a bit of a sign, like that this garden is like a new chapter, next level, because this was the first year I've ever actually researched specific varieties and like chose based on varieties and not just like, oh, I want to try this vegetable. So I feel like I kind of gardened in baby steps. Like, I started with transplants, and then it was like mostly transplants, but also a couple things from seed, and the seeds did not do well. And then last year I did more stuff from seeds, and it was kind of like 50-50. Some things just never worked. Some things did okay. This time, everything worked. It just feels really good. I also, for the first time ever, used coconut coir instead of potting soil, so maybe that had something to do with it. All right, so I'm taking you out my side yard. This is where the garden used to be. I'm gonna show you, it's such a mess. This is one of the big projects, is to clean this whole area up. So you can see this was, oh, you can't see. Hang on, let me turn around. This is the side yard garden. You can see the old cage for the top of my raised bed over there, where I had to take it off and I need to disassemble it so I can get the garbage bin to take it. These are some lingering potted plants that I have. This is one of my big projects, to get this side yard all cleaned out so we can figure out what we want to put over here. I'm probably going to leave this rosemary because it seems to do really well right here. I don't know what I'm going to do about my aloe, if I'm going to leave it or keep it. I need it close to the door because we actually use it all the time, and you can see it really hated the cold, so hopefully she's okay. I've had her for over 10 years. Over here I have a dwarf banana that also really did not like the cold, but as you can see from the green new growth coming out right here, and I have two baby bananas, one on this side, and there was one on this side. Still there? Yep. I want to replant these because I want to start like a little banana orchard. So I'll probably take that out and move her. This is some latana, and this is actually milkweed for the butterflies. So I might just leave that because it always comes back, and that's pretty big now, so we'll see. That's a lemongrass that is out of control and just needs to completely come out. And then this is just some flowers and pretty things that I'll trim back and clean up and leave. And then this stinker right here, this citrus that I have had for no joke years, that has done so bad, won't grow. Finally, my son buys me an orange tree for Christmas, and I'm like, oh, this is so exciting. I can start my citrus orchard. I'll go dig out that other citrus that hasn't been doing well, and we'll, you know, put them both in like these beautiful pots, and we'll flank the garden. And of course now it's doing great, and so now I have guilt about the idea of digging it out and moving it. So I don't know, what would you do? Would you let this guy stay here and just have one other citrus in another area? Look, it even, I swear, it's got buds on it. I can't take it out. Ugh. What are you doing to me? Oh my gosh, there's flowers. This is the first time it's ever had flowers or buds. All right, I guess it's staying. All right, so I'm gonna take you around. I never really walk this way to the new garden, but I'm gonna take you around so you see this angle because it's one of my favorites. It's so symmetrical. This is the new garden, week 1, phase 1, because it will probably change over time, and the layout that I settled on. This is all of the beds that were in the old side yard garden reconfigured into this kind of protege shape. So my idea for this space right here between the two 4x2 beds is to use these old fence panels that I dug out, and they're 8 feet long each, and so I want to cut them in half, and I have 4 of them, and I want to basically stack them on top of each other in a square and make a 4x4 low raised bed and have that be a flower and pollinator garden. And I think I want to put a not a bird feeder, a bird bath in the middle of it right here that has a little solar fountain. So that would be like my water fixture in the garden for now. We'll see how that goes, but I just think it would be so beautiful to have like this whole middle section like full of just beautiful flowers of varying heights, and I'll probably do some herbs in there and just kind of have it be like a very potager, mixed up, almost cottage garden style element. And then what I want to do eventually also is do little L-shaped low planters here on the corners. The problem is, you guys can tell me your ideas. The problem is I don't know how I want the edges of this garden to go, because right now it's square. That's just because that's the shape of the yard fabric, but it doesn't have to be square. As you can see, our elephant ears come out of from the shore in like kind of like a semicircle, and then they fade back in, and then nothing. So I could have the garden kind of curve down into them like a really pretty way and have that line kind of curve. And then the other problem is long-term vision. This entire section I think we're going to mulch because it's shady from these giant oak trees that are our neighbors, and it's the only shady section in our yard, and the grass won't grow. Like, that's as good as it ever looks. So I think what we're going to do is when we mulch all of this, just mulch all of that. Here is design-wise where I get stuck, because right now there's like a visual distinction between the garden area and the rest of the yard because the tarp is black and it forms the square, and then within the square the garden is in a rectangular kind of shape. But if this is all just all mulch, all mulch, all mulch, all the way back to there and all the way to the corner, then I don't feel like the garden is gonna have a border. So that's why I was thinking I will do some sort of like L-shaped thing here that lines up with, whoop, right there, that lines up with the corner of that bed, comes up to here, and then goes here. And then eventually we want to do something filling this area, whether it's a shade garden, which would be so fun because there's so many beautiful plants that I would love to grow that just don't grow in our backyard because it gets so much sun. That could possibly grow right there, which would be really fun. Or like we might do like a kids play area, hang a swing, do some sort of play structure, and do like maybe like small little flower garden things all around it. So that's for that. Back over in the corner over here, you might see all those spiky little things. That is all my pineapples. I had to move them into pots. They were in the raised bed. They were in this rectangle section here. I had to take them all out and pot them to move them so that I can move the bed. But now I kind of like them in the pots because what I was thinking is I could leave them out. They're so architectural and beautiful, their color and their shape. I could leave them out and I could do something really cool decorative wise with them in the garden. And then as soon as they start to fruit, because pineapples, it takes them a couple years to fruit, so only a couple of them will fruit this spring, I could move them into our pool enclosure right here into the corner so that the squirrels and the animals won't eat them. That's why I had them in the raised bed before, because it had a chicken wire cage around it and it kept the squirrels and the birds from eating my pineapples before I got to, because when they were on the ground, the animals ate them as soon as they turned yellow. So that's what I think my pineapple plan is, and I feel like very clever about that. Taking you to another angle. So this is the angle when I walk out of my back deck, and I'm only gonna stay here for a second because our pool pump is really loud, but you can see this little walkway that leads down to the water, and it looks beautiful from over here too. Isn't that pretty? Alright, now I'm walking from the same side that the garden's on, basically from my driveway down. So again, I filled out really symmetrical shape, but just from a different angle. So all of these pavers were on the ground like these ones, and I had to dig them all up, but eventually I'm going to put them back running through the middle of the garden to connect to the walkway that we have down there that leads to our little sunset deck by the water. But we're going to mulch all of this, and I don't want to lay them until we've done all the mulch, and I can't do the mulch until I have done edging. And it's just like, you know how those things are where it's like one step, but you can't do that step until you do this step, and you can't do that step till you do this step. So that's a bit where I am. So like I said, this garden is going to be happening kind of all at one time. Things are going to be growing in the beds as I'm finishing the bottom and the edging and building out new beds, and it's all going to be kind of growing simultaneously, but I think that that's okay. Isn't it beautiful out here? One of the big things that we have to do is have a survey company come out and mark our line. So with the last garden, the problem was this fence. Is it in focus? It was this fence that goes all the way up. When we moved in, we were told that fence was on the property line, but when our neighbors decided to get a survey done for themselves because they were doing like a huge home expansion, we found out that the fence was in the right spot in some places, but the angle going from the water to the street was off. So like down here by the water, it was only off by a couple inches, but up by the street, it was off by almost a foot, because our property is shaped like a pie slice because we're on a lake. And wouldn't have been a big deal, except that they had to get like machinery into their backyard, and that side yard was the only way they could do it, and it wouldn't fit with the fence where it was, but that extra like 6 to 12 inches was all they needed. So we had to move the fence. The problem was the back of this garden and cage was like a half an inch from the fence. So we had to move the whole garden and dig up a bunch of plants. And the machines ran over a bunch of plants that were even like on the ground and kind of growing back. That was why this whole thing started. Because of that, I now have like severe anxiety about doing anything in our yard unless I know it's actually in our yard. This fence is not ours. It is the neighbor on the other sides. And our neighbor up on the corner, actually, who doesn't, their property isn't on the water, their property includes like 4 feet along this fence to the water. It basically includes a walkway, it's called an easement, that goes all the way down to the water. So if they wanted to, they could build like a really cute little alley almost, and like a little walking dock, and they wouldn't necessarily be able to see the water from their house, but they could like walk down and enjoy it, put paddle boards in, kayaks. They have never done that. As you can see, like there's trees and stuff all along here that they would have to pay to clear out. But there's like 4 to 6 feet from that fence in that's not technically mine, and I don't want to build any structures or plant anything to where if they decided that they want to have people come and take out all these plants and put in a fence, I want all of my stuff to be on the inside of our property line so that they can't say that it needs to get moved, or so that they can't accidentally break it. So we're gonna have a survey company come and mark the entire line from our driveway down to the water. That way I know exactly where stuff is. That's also important because we're planning on putting the bees somewhere down here, and I'm pretty sure there are rules about how far your bees have to be from like the property like lines. So I just want to make sure I know specifically and exactly where all those lines are, so that I can make sure that everything that we're doing is well within the borders of our property, well within the rules, and not going to cause any sort of problem for us or the neighbors, or any sort of issue where I'm gonna be forced to move something that I've worked really hard on. So that's why everything is just kind of like randomly floating in from the fence, if you're curious, because it's not actually our fence, unlike that entire strip of land where like plants are kind of growing wild is not ours either. So we'll see how that goes. I moved everything so far in, like way past where I was sure the line was, just because I didn't want to have to deal with moving it again once the survey company goes. I know it's in enough, but I don't want to like add lighting behind the garden bed and find out that like all the lighting, like all the posts that I dug in were on the line or something. So have to do that too. So there's a lot of projects that are all going to be getting done all at one time. But the cool thing about the garden, and the cool thing about the mentality I have this time, is that this is not something that has to be perfect. I really want to go slow and lay really solid foundations. I want to do it right. I don't want to cut corners, because anytime you cut corners, you just create 2 more for yourself, which is one of my favorite little sayings that my friend Chelsea always said, and it stuck in my brain. It's like, when you cut corners, it may be faster now, but you're just creating 2 more problems down the road. And that's definitely something that happened to me with my last garden, mostly just because I was in a rush to experience the beauty of it, and also just because I was naive. I didn't know what I was doing. So, you know, do the best you can until you know better, and then when you know better, do better. And that this is an exact playing out of that little proverb right here. So I don't want to rush figuring out the shape of the garden. I don't want to rush doing the edging and the mulching. I want to do a really good job. And so I'm not going to let that stop me, though. There's no reason why I can't grow in these beds even when the bottom isn't done. Like, it's not going to be as pretty, it's not going to be as Instagrammable. That's fine. It's not going to stop me from being able to grow herbs or onions or peppers. Like, they're going to grow whether or not Instagram thinks the garden's pretty. So thanks for coming along. Week 1 of the suburban backyard garden, and we'll see where she goes. right, thanks for hanging out with me. The sun is going down and I've got to go inside and make dinner, but I figured I would give you a quick little sunset walk around tour of the property to leave you with a moment of zen for